I need a private moment. Hold on. That's so good. What's going on, everyone? Chef Eric Adjepong here in the Delish studios. I cannot actually wait to tell you about how delicious this recipe is. You may know me from Tournament of Champions, Top Chef, Wildcard Kitchen, but specifically Selena Chef.
This will be fun.
This is gonna be great.
Choose your color.
Nice job, ladies. That felt so good. I'm gonna show you guys how to make a chocolate malva pudding, one of my favorite desserts of all time. Slightly different from the dish that we did at Selena Chef. We did a straight up South African malva pudding cake, but we're gonna do a slightly different version for Delish. We're adding a little bit of cocoa powder, add a little bit of bitterness, a little sweetness to it as well. I love, 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 one more time, love this dessert. It's tacky, it's sweet, it's sticky. It's really just decadent. I'd say probably like top 3 desserts of all time. Let's get into it. All right, so first things first, like any good recipe starts, you actually have to turn your equipment on. So let's go to the oven. We're putting on our oven, baking it, 375. Get that preheated. So for the next step, we have to put all our dry ingredients together. We have flour, baking powder, baking soda, and of course, cocoa powder. We have our sifter. We want to get a nice kind of airiness about our dry ingredients right here. So we're gonna use a sifter, a little bit of a whisk, and you want to put that all together. Baking powder, baking soda, and of course, our cocoa powder. Nice bitter notes, sweet. I love a chocolate version of anything, honestly. All right, so dry ingredients are now sifted and out the way. Let's talk about the wet. So we have eggs, sugar, a little bit of salt, apple cider vinegar for a little bit of that tartness, some melted butter, apricot jam. This right here is like the key to a beautiful malva pudding. And then milk, of course, and put everything together. We have our milk here, full fat. And let's go ahead and get those yolks broken up. That apple cider vinegar goes right in. Melted butter right after, and then we'll put in our salt, azúcar, some sugar, and this is a sweet cake, so we got a good amount. And then last but not least, that apricot jam. This is really the star of the show, and get this all mixed up. So we have all of our wet ingredients mixed up. We're gonna go ahead and fold in the dry ingredients, but first, before I even get into that, let's even talk about Selena Chef, period. Like, the fact that I even got this call was just absolutely amazing. I remember receiving the call to come over, and it's flattering, number one, to be invited to someone's home, let alone Selena Gomez, right? But to get there and really be enamored with her excitement about cooking as well, it's kind of refreshing to me, especially as a chef who's been doing this for so long, to have someone who is kind of a novice, really trying to learn their way through the kitchen and invite me into their home to, you know, cook with them and teach them. It was a really, really special moment for me. We have our dry ingredients right here. Let's go ahead and fold them. We're gonna fold them into thirds, because we really want the dry ingredients to start to absorb that liquid right here. It smells amazing already, and I haven't even like fully put in all the dry ingredients though. I remember Selena just like falling in love with the process of this cake. I don't think she's ever made it before, but she does have a sweet tooth. So she, like anything, was just really excited to add a new like recipe into her repertoire. I'd be lying if I say I met Selena beforehand. It was literally all like right there, right then. I remember pulling up to her home, and it was kind of like that scene in Taken where you don't know exactly where you're going, but they're just like driving you to a secret location, it seems like. Her private home, right? Just really personal, it's really intimate. I remember coming into the house and just being greeted by her grandfather, her grandmother, her best friends were there as well. And it was just a really, really sweet moment. I felt at home immediately. And, you know, I'm just so appreciative that she allowed me to come over and make this meal with her. The one thing about Selena that surprised me is she's an introvert. She's very much like in tune with herself, her energy, how much energy she's putting out to the world, and she's very reserved. And I like that. Someone, especially her status and her like, her celebrity, I can imagine just like so many people wanting a little bit of her, like her time, her energy, like all of that. But she's very, very much, she keeps her solitude so well. And I love that. I actually admire that about her. Up next, we need to go ahead and grease our bun pan. I have a pan spray right here, but you can go ahead and use butter, margarine, or you can actually use an individual muffin pan. I love a malva pudding that's like individual just for me, but this right here is for the family. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now. All right, so up next, we're gonna go ahead and pour our batter, now that it's nice and mixed with the dry and wet, into our prepared bun pan. Nice and slow. We wanna go ahead and tap the pan just a little bit as well, make sure all the air bubbles are out before we throw it in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. Cake's in the oven, doing its thing. Let's talk about the glaze. Very, very important. We can't have a malva pudding without the glaze. We have cream, a little bit of sugar, butter, and a little bit of H2O as well. We're gonna put all that together and create almost like a little bit of a custard, like a condensed milk. Put our pot over medium-high heat. We'll add in our water, our cream. Let's go ahead and pour in the sugar. We'll get all of this whisked. Obviously, making this cake for Selena was a pretty cool moment in my life and my career, but if I were to cook or make anything for any sort of celebrity, dead or alive, I think I would do it for my favorite actress, Meryl Streep, one of my favorite basketball players, Steph Curry. Kobe Bryant would have been amazing to cook for sure. Barack Obama, I think would have been a really cool moment for me. And Rihanna, because I just love Rihanna, so yeah. We're gonna go ahead and mount in our cold butter now. Again, we're right over medium-high heat. You don't wanna go too high because that will actually break the glaze. You don't wanna do that. So a nice gentle heat as that cold butter starts to emulsify. And you're using your whisk just to kind of get everything together. So once this glaze is nice and like formed and uniformed and that cake is done, we're actually gonna poke holes all throughout the cake, right? And that's gonna create that beautiful spongy texture that malva pudding is so known for. Oh, this glaze is looking delicious. Let's go ahead and add in the rest of this butter. We literally have that consistency exactly where we want it. Again, cold butter really helps. This is like a technical type of move right here for the cake. You wanna use a nice gentle simmer. You wanna use really cold butter and you wanna whisk. Whisk, whisk, whisk. And that right there will create an emulsion that's nice and smooth. A glaze that's just perfect to pour. No lumps, no clumps, no breakage. So we just moved our glaze right off the heat. Our cake is still in the oven right now. We still wanna keep our glaze nice and warm. So I'm just gonna leave it on the back end of this stove right here on a really, really low heat. Continue to whisk it, but nothing too high. You don't want this glaze to break. This cake looks absolutely perfect. Wow. You almost want to kind of slightly over bake it because that glaze is going to soak up all of that beautiful cake. Look at this, nice and even right there. You can see the cake kind of pulling away from the pan itself. This is perfectly, perfectly done. Looks beautiful. So it's time to poke holes into this cake. This is pretty like the most fun, interactive part about making a malva pudding. I have some old chopsticks that are just lying around, but if you don't have this, you can use a skewer. You can actually use a fork as well and just poke a bunch of holes all throughout the cake. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's talk about competition cooking. I have not only competed in a bunch of cooking competitions, but I've judged a few as well. And I gotta say, it's really easier on the judging side. Competition is tough. You're not only like facing yourself and the camera that's right in front of you, but you have to like present your food to a palate that's so like trained and literally tasted everything in the world. Everyone thinks that Gordon Ramsay is the toughest, and he is a pretty hard chef to impress. But I gotta say, on the competition side, the judge that is the most difficult to really impress, I gotta say, Tom Colicchio, Scott Conant, Marcus Samuelson. These chefs have been cooking more than like half my life, right? So there's no wool you can put over their eyes. They know more than I probably will ever remember. So that's probably the chefs that I would say you really have to like have your A game. That's why I just rather prefer being on the other side. It's cooler. I don't have to sweat. There's no cameras right in front of me like that. It's just a lot easier. So we have our cake beautifully rested. We poked a bunch of holes in it. Now it's time to pour our glaze into the pan. We're gonna keep the cake in the pan because we want that glaze to kind of soak up, especially on the bottom of the cake. While that's doing its thing, let's talk about some garnishes. I have some strawberries, very seasonal. So let's go ahead and just slice it up really thinly, just like that. I always love pairing fresh fruit with the cake. It adds that beautiful kind of like accent to everything. So obviously I've been in a bunch of cooking competitions. There was one time on Top Chef we had to do an all dessert challenge. I did not do this. I did not win either, and I probably should have made this cake. But I would say Top Chef, like, it's not easy. It's as advertised. It's difficult, it's hard, but it's kind of like chef camp, right? So you're in a room in a house with 15 other chefs that love food just as much as you do and want to win that money just as much as you do. So there's natural competition that comes from it, but then there's also like a beautiful kind of networking, almost like a fraternity that builds from that as well. That's super organic, like still to this day. Everyone that I competed against is a really dear friend of mine. We all have like group chats, we all check in on each other. People are getting married, babies, like life is happening. So I really, really just am so indebted to like being in Top Chef. I would say that is definitely the most like rewarding, difficult, but most rewarding thing I've done. Tournament of Champions is more like, I kind of compare it to like a sprinter.
3 of these are awesome, 2 suck, and 1 of you is gonna go to the 16.
A sprinter runs for 100 meters, 200 meters, and they're done. Top Chef is more like a marathon, right? You really have to talk about the endurance. You really have to be in it for the long game. And typically, sprinters don't do well in marathons, and marathon runners don't do well in sprints. So you really have to find that like perfect kind of like middle point between you, the food, your skill set, and everything. So TLC is hard, but I gotta say Top Chef is like the hardest thing I've ever done, period. We have everything here. We have our beautiful malva pudding cake that's been soaking in that glaze nice and beautifully. It's sitting, the longer it sits, the more delicious it gets. A little bit of 10x powdered sugar right here for a little bit of garnish. We have our strawberries that we macerated with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of lemon juice as well. Now it's just time to plate up. I mean, this right here is the assembly of it all is really fun. I remember at Selena's house, her grandfather walked down the stairs right around this time. I don't know if he kind of like had that like feeling that the cake was done or whatever, but he came in and he tried it and was absolutely blown away and immediately asked for the recipe for this cake. So I'm excited to share with you guys. Let's cut into it. All right, so our beautiful malva pudding cake. We have our macerated strawberries with a little bit of lemon and sugar. Again, we place that glaze all over and then just finish with a little bit of powdered sugar. It's time to dig in. I need a private moment. Hold on. That's so good. And immediately reminds me of my time with Selena, getting this like finished product, eating it with her grandparents or friends. This cake is absolutely delicious. It's moist. That beautiful glaze is really, really sweet, but it's not overpowering. I grab a little bit of that strawberry as well. Beautiful, I get that lemon. It kind of like refreshes my palate as I'm going back in for the next bite. So moist, so delicious. Again, Selena loved this cake. I think her grandfather loved it more. I implore you, stop what you're doing, go make this cake immediately. Perfect for friends, perfect for family, perfect for large gatherings. Obviously you can make this, split it up, and it really just gets the job done. I love this. For this dessert and so many other recipes, check out Delish.com. And to find me, check out Chef Eric Adjepong on all social media handles. And also, tune into Wild Card Kitchen Season 2, airing on Food Network. See you soon.